Good morning, my fellow podcast listeners. Welcome to the next podcast episode. This episode, I'm going to be talking about congruency. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? How do you apply it? What am I talking about? So, congruency in our thoughts, congruency in our emotions, congruency in our actions, congruency in, just our behaviors, all of the things, the physical things, all of the emotional things, all of the mental things, and congruency with the truth of who we are. So that would be even our spiritual selves, right? The 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 authenticity or the courage to stand in our authenticity, right? Like to really step into our authentic selves and really be honest with ourselves, really be honest with ourselves. So I've spoken about this before, but where are we out of alignment? So congruency and alignment is very much the same thing or very similar perspective, right? Where it's just like, where are our emotions out of alignment? Where are we not being honest with ourselves? Where are we feeling fear and not acknowledging it? Where are we feeling shame and not acknowledging it? Where are we worrying, stressing? What are we believing? What are we believing we're not good enough and not acknowledging it, right? Are we feeling unloved, not acknowledging it? Feeling, thinking, believing, right? And then we act out in those ways. Now, here's the thing. You're going to think, why would I want to go into those rabbit holes? But congruency is the acknowledgement of it. So I'm getting this topic, or I have come up with this topic. This topic has, arisen because I've been doing more and more with my horses. I've been going out to the horses, and this is one of the concepts that in the spiritual teachings, in healing with horses, horse medicine, all of this horse wisdom, is that when you go into the horse pen, the horses don't give a crap how you feel. They don't give a crap how you feel. They don't give a crap what you're thinking or believing. They really don't. But they want to make sure that you are being congruent, that you are in alignment. So if you are scared shitless, they want you to acknowledge. They want you to behave like. They want you to show up scared shitless. You don't want to be in that pen. They want you to acknowledge that. They want you to understand that. They want you to, even then, while we're doing this work, move through it, work through it, deal with it, and sit with it, right? Now, if you're not doing this work, if you're just moving through your day, I mean, we kind of, if we're on this journey, we're kind of always doing this work. But I can be scared. Like, yesterday I wasn't scared, but yesterday I went into the pen and my ego was getting the best of me, and I'm just like, I can do this. And not that I couldn't, but I was bulldozing, right? Like, and so I was just walking in there and I'm just like overtaking all of the little nuances that were going on beyond me and beyond the situation itself, right? And so I had to take a step back and I had to get congruent and I had to be respectful and I had to really trust and I had to really even ask permission to be in their space, but not in a I'm unwelcome kind of way. I was very welcome in the space, but it's just kind of like I had to ask permission to pet them. And it was just like, yeah, sure, go ahead. If I didn't ask permission, then I was, and it's very, like with horses, it's non-communicative. I didn't have to say it out loud and get like a nod of the head or anything. I just had to acknowledge it within myself, wait for the answer, and or like wait for them, and sometimes it is not necessarily a nod of the head, but they'll look at you, they'll acknowledge you, and they'll be okay with it. If they're not okay with it, they might take actions like step away or back up a little bit or just act or respond in a way of like, I heard your ask, and that's a no, so I'm going to respond to that, right? And sometimes it can be like a no, like a freezing no, like I'm gonna freeze here because I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Like the horses could do that if the freeze response is something that comes up. So you really have to really, 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 and my sensitive people out there, if you are listening to this podcast, you are very sensitive. Probably because you resonate with me because we are very sensitive. But I'm not going to just assume that, but I'm going to ask you to look inside of yourself, to acknowledge your sensitivities. And we can be. And honestly, okay, one moment of sensitivity here is that I didn't know how sensitive I was because I had it all blocked off. And when it was blocked off and walled off and just be like hard heart, like, then I was sensitive. I was very sensitive, but I wasn't in alignment with that. I wasn't acknowledging that. I was very pushing past that, I guess. The more I healed my wounds, the more I healed my story, the more I moved through my emotions, I can't say I became more sensitive because I already was very sensitive, but the sensitivity started to shine through. So I need you to acknowledge that. So what I'm getting at is do your work, heal the wounds, even just start to acknowledge. That's the whole point of this, because I'm bringing this up because of the horses, but really congruency in your whole day, right? Because the reason congruency or alignment is coming up in the horse pen a little bit, like to speak about and to acknowledge, is because it's also coming up in my relationships. It's also coming up in my work. It's also coming up in my actions. It's coming up with my kids. It's coming up, right? Like in my life, in my schedule. Is this congruent? Is this aligned? Is this showing up for me? Does this need to be changed? How am I sitting with this? Does this make me not anxious, but is this stressful for me to do it like this, or does this need to be changed to make it a little bit more graceful, a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more at ease, a little more aligned? And so it's showing up in my conversations, it's showing up in my emails, it's showing up in my social media, it's showing up in all the places. So it's not just in the horse pen. The horses are the ones that teach us, or that helped teach me to really be aligned, be congruent with our messages, with our words, with our behaviors, with our actions, and show up in the truth of who we are. Really, at the bottom of everything is showing up in the truth of who we are. Even if you are at the beginning or middle of your journey, and the truth is that you are wounded. The truth is that you are in pain. The truth is that this really fucking sucks, right? Like this is not the way you saw things going. And this hurts your heart so much, right? Like if you are in that place of like, just, this is too much. This is not how I saw my life going. This is not ease. This is not grace. This is just all over the map. Try to spit that out. And it's just the wounds are shining through. We can still be in congruency with that. We can still acknowledge that, right? We can still be with that. And once we are with that, then we can start to move through that. Then we can, like, once you acknowledge it, you can start to take steps day to day, like my money's not aligned, or my spending habits aren't aligned, or like I said, my relationships or my phone calls or my healthcare is not aligned. Something, there's got to be something in your life that you still are working through or struggling with, or those challenges that are coming up. And they're coming up because they're probably not in alignment, right? Although you might be in alignment, and you might be working through it. So your healthcare might be on point, But like you might be going to the gym every day and eating properly, and there's just that place of moving through it. There's just that place of the work needs to be done, right? And those small mindset shifts, the courage that it takes, and trusting ourselves and getting to the other side of it. So some things might be in alignment, but you'll know they're in alignment because they almost come with ease. Now, when I say ease, I don't mean like no situations. Like what I'm talking about is my business wasn't in alignment. And there's a whole other concept. I'm just going to see how long I speak to this today, whether this fits in my time frame or not, but it looks like I still have lots of time on this podcast. I usually try to make them between 30 and 40 minutes, so I still have lots of time, and I might get into this other topic. But anyways, my business was not fully in alignment. And it wasn't happening with ease. It was happening with struggle and challenges, and it was happening that I would get sick when I would work on my projects. And it wasn't that the messages that were coming through weren't aligned. It wasn't that the behaviors that I was doing weren't aligned. But I had to shift something. Something had to shift. And I had to sit back and I had to acknowledge what is going on here. Yep, this is going to take me right into the next conversation because you guys need to hear this. I needed to hear this. So badly did I need to hear this. And this goes right into the sensitivity point about it. So the conversation will definitely happen today. I needed to acknowledge what was happening, what was blocking, what was going on in my business, what energy was there, what was the situation that was coming up with my business because it wasn't in alignment. Okay? And now it is more in alignment than ever. How did I do that? I healed, I shifted, I cleared, and I worked through it. Okay, so you can, like I suggest you grab a notebook or pen and paper or whatever, grab your phone, the notes area on your phone or wherever you keep notes, journal, whatever you got on your phone or your computer or your notebook or whatever. And you start writing down those places that you don't feel are in alignment. But I also want you to notice, because then you're going to go through and you're going to start to work through them, right? But I also want you to notice like the day to day, like how did I feel about that conversation? How did I feel about that like experience or event? Or how did I feel about reading that email? How did I feel about engaging with that community? How did I feel about what I had on my schedule today? How did I feel about, am I getting farther behind by whatever I schedule in today? Like if you took a day off to like clean your house, which is what I'm doing today, even though here I am, is that in alignment? Or is it that, no, I need to be doing something else today. I need to be having a fun day on my Sundays, which today is, and this just recording will come out on Wednesday. And then it's in alignment for me to bring someone in on whatever days and do the cleaning for me, right? Or is it in alignment to, schedule something else differently? Or is it in alignment to, and this is where the decluttering and all of the work, so all of the work comes in, but on the day to day, how did this feel? How do I feel? What am I thinking right now? What are my thoughts telling me? Like, am I saying to myself, like all day long, I'm not good enough. This isn't good enough. This isn't going right. I really hate that person. Oh God, that person really gets under my skin. Like, what are your brain? What are your thoughts? What's going on? And write those down too. Let's really take note of what's coming up for us. How are our habits, our behaviors? Are we doing things that aren't supportive for us? Are we in procrastination? Are we not abusing, but like not respecting our belongings, right? That's a behavior. Are we not respecting our bank accounts and, overspending? Or are we not respecting our money by not spending it, right? Those oversavers, those I can't do anything with my life because, sorry, I hit the desk and it made my whole video wiggle. I'm sorry about that. So, are your actions and your behaviors and your thoughts and your feelings aligned with the truth of who you are? So that's where I'm going with this. Back to the sensitivity piece, and back to the piece that I wasn't sure I was going to have time for today, but I absolutely will. Okay. So my business wasn't in alignment. And I've talked about this before I'm just looking back. In some of these, I've talked about, I know because I was upset. And I talked about this before. But you know what? I'm moving through it and it's all good. And life is good. And I found a healer. I found a modality that was going to help me work through my wounds and my pain. And so here we go. I'm going to tell you not the full story because I do not have time for that today, but I'm going to tell you that sometimes your life is not in congruency. Your life is not aligned. Your life is not working. Your life is not at ease because you have some type of attachment to you. You have some type of curse on you. You have some kind of psychic attack on you. You have some kind of outside energy affecting your situation. Now, I use all those words, and those are kind of like the spiritual mediumship is where I got those ones. So those are the words that get tossed around in the mediumship journey. But it's also just things like you are not being respected. Your voice, your decisions are not being respected, and someone is walking all over you. So where are you people pleasing? Where are you allowing that to happen? How within yourself can you heal that place and space of starting to be respected, starting to honor yourself? But when you honor yourself, that also creates a space where you ask others to honor you as well, and it gets upheld. I mean, there's a spot for asking for it, and then there's the place of actually having them respect that. Does that make sense? Where within you, what came up with me, I will tell you this part because this is not like a 12-hour story. And this is a journey that I actually went on for a while, trying to get to the bottom of this. This is the funny thing. Here is the irony of my story, is that what got healed within me and being disrespected and all of this stuff, having people take advantage, is because I did not feel seen and heard. But the irony there is I knew this a while ago. Like, it came up, the messages, it was actually the horses that brought this up for me. And like, I'm writing, I'm journaling, and I'm bringing it up. Like, Spirit is bringing it up, and I'm acknowledging it. It's being acknowledged, and I'm understanding, okay, this is congruent with me. This is how I really, truly feel. Understood. It's felt. It's acknowledged. It's here. This was back in like 2018, which was a while ago. But also it was happening before that as well. That's just when I got acknowledged. Okay, so I figure that out. The messages came through loud and clear. And then what went on to happen was I went to, or even just that first experience with it, and everything after that, my pattern, my energy of not feeling seen and heard, which I'm still sitting with, because that is what I went to a session the other day, like within the last couple months. And it came up and she said, are you feeling seen right now? And I said no. And I started to cry, like really cry. And it really hit home. It really was the truth. Like, no, I'm not being seen, because when I speak up for myself, I'm not being, like, I am being disrespected and I'm getting walked all over. People are not listening and they're just doing what they want anyway. So I'm speaking up, but no, it's not being seen and heard. It's not being respected. So we worked through that like this last couple months. But what happened in between, like this last couple months and when I first acknowledged it, was all of the healers in between there weren't hearing me. They weren't seeing me. They weren't seeing the truth. They weren't finding the thing. And I'm just like, well, this is I can't say like a new thing, because it's perhaps something that I recognize because I had felt in the past. But my journey before that, I was feeling seen and heard. Like the healers were finding, and the courses that I was finding within myself. So I'm not sure why this or where this came up or what. But anyways, it needed to be healed. So if being seen and heard, feeling loved, feeling honored, feeling acknowledged, feeling respected, feeling trusted, feeling, all of the things, feeling like enough. If you're enough, not even just within yourselves, but for others, right? If you're not feeling loved by others, people would say like, well, you're not loving yourself enough. No, 100%, and 100%, and are you loving yourself enough? And there's this other place about believing or congruency, or it's almost like, yes, I can love myself. I love myself. But, the way other people are treating me or what they are bringing forward to me, I don't believe others can love me or are loving me or are loving towards me, right? Like, because that's what's showing up for you. So sometimes it is our self-love, and sometimes it is actually believing that others can love us too. It's like that independence thing where it's just like, I can trust myself, but I don't trust others, right? I'm independent enough to trust myself, but I don't trust others. So it's kind of like, I trust myself to love me, but I don't trust others to love me, right? Do you understand the difference? That there's just this nuance there. So even, and so this tangled web we weave of what fits right for you, what sits right for you. But let me even go back to the attachments and the curses and the psychic attacks and all of the negative. So others, excuse me, we can clear off of like, so, okay, it's like, I feel jealous towards so-and-so, and that jealousy has me all riled up, and then I'm really projecting out, I get super jealous and I'd be like, screw you, like, and I'm really like thinking or feeling things. This is not a true story. This is just kind of like a metaphor or an example that I would really be like, so sometimes jealousy or sometimes that hatred or that vindictiveness. So sometimes we can take it out on ourselves, and then sometimes we really take it out on the other person. Does that make sense? So sometimes people really take their shit out on us. Let me repeat that. Sometimes people really take their shit out on us because they are not congruent. So imagine this. So at the beginning, oh, this is perfect. This is a perfect wind up. This is a perfect full story to this. Okay, so I started this podcast. I started this conversation saying and talking about how you could be congruent, how you look inward and feel your feelings and acknowledge your thoughts and really step into the authenticity and the congruency of the truth of who you are and really show up in your honest way. The other thing that happens is, well, not everyone knows how to do this, right? So yes, I'm telling you to take responsibility for your stuff, but not everyone is out there taking responsibility for their stuff. So if they're not taking responsibility for their stuff, they are projecting it all over you, but then everyone else as well, right? They're not standing in congruency. So the other part of this is when the horses are in the pen and we walk in, we need to be congruent. We need to be aligned. We need to be grounded. We need to be connected to who we really are, right? And we really need to show up in the truth of who we really are to have a present or, be present with the horses, to have a heartfelt moment with the horses. If we're not, we can't have that heartfelt relationship with the horses if we're not heartfelt within ourselves, right? That's one piece. The other piece that I'm talking about is this doesn't always have to show up in the horse pen, right? Meaning, are the people who are walking through your door, let's say the horses are in their house, right? And we're walking in, welcome, come on in, right? And we're walking through. Now, if we're not congruent with ourselves, the horses are going to start acting out. They're going to start behaving. They're going to start to mirror back to us what our stuff is. That's not necessarily their job, but that's what they do as part of this whole universal conglomeration of energetics. That's what they do. All they know how to do is if someone is fearfully walking up to them or angrily walking up to them and not taking responsibility for their stuff, that horse is going to start acting out. Yes? Okay. As sensitive beings, and I might have spoken about this if I talked about a sensitive topic before. When people are, or even when we are entering their space, but when they are entering our space, and we are a sensitive being. Now, we are universal, energetic, spiritual, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, right? We are that energetic, spiritual. We are just a horse. We're not a horse, we're a human, but we are like just a mammal like a horse. We just read energy like horses. We just communicate like nonverbal communication like horses. We have every single capability that those horses have where they respond to nonverbal cues, and so do we. So if someone is walking into our house, someone's walking into our space, they are entering our lives, or they're even, phoning us or communicating with us in some way, emailing or whatever. Are they being congruent? And if they aren't being congruent, how are we responding and reacting to them not being congruent in their space? not in like in their space, but like in their energy is what I'm meaning. Or even if we're going into like their homes or like the schools or the businesses or the meeting them on the street and shaking their hands, giving them a hug, are they being congruent with what they are really feeling? Do they want to just sit down and cry and just have a big old ball session that day? And we're giving them a hug and they're saying, I'm fine. You're not really fine, lady or sir or ma'am or best friend or, cousin of mine. You're not really fine. And you're not being congruent in the space. Now, beyond that, there are some things that they might be beating themselves up about. So that's one thing. But then I started to go on a tangent about them projecting it out. So they definitely, if they have anger towards something, if they're really, something happened for them this morning, like in their morning, and they're going about their day and someone really pissed them off, they got an email, they got a phone call, they had a conversation, I don't know, they ripped their favorite pair of jeans, because it happens. And then they get really mad about it. And then they're going along their day, and then they go to the grocery store and they're just freaking upset because their favorite pair of jeans, and now they have to dish out money for another favorite pair of jeans, and they're not going to fit the same way, and I can't believe they don't make jeans the same way. It happens, right? And you just want to say to that person, like, get over it. It's okay. It'll be okay. Everything is okay. But then they go to the grocery store, or then they go into the bank, or then they go pick their kid up at school, and then they start ranting and raving, and I can't believe you didn't do your homework last night. Well, that has nothing to do with that kid or that banker or that. So people can project, and it honestly had nothing to do with the pair of jeans either. It's like, what is that person feeling? And they're not acknowledging it. Do you understand the congruency? If they just sat down and acknowledged what they were feeling about ripping their favorite pair of jeans, then they would move through it. This is the work. Then they would move through it and they wouldn't crap all over everyone else's day. Okay? But beyond that, people can get pretty mean. So one thing we have to do is try to not take it personally, because that happens as well. We just don't take like, okay, my friend calls me up and they're in a pretty angry mood, but it's not about me. So we just don't take it personally. And then we just move on with our day. And so if that was really the case, we would hang up the phone with them, forgive them, give a big sigh, release whatever is going on in their day, and get back into balance, get back into congruency in our day if someone has just crapped all over us, right? Okay. But also, if there is more than that, because there can be more than that, there can really, really be, and I want to go into the place of like attachment. So someone has attached their claws into you. They're really trying to take you down. They're really trying to they're blaming you for everything that's wrong in their life. And they're really not, they have such deeper issues that they're really not willing, because it might not be so much about ripped jeans anymore. This is probably about things like, PTSD or traumatized things like childhood traumas and stuff like that. And they're just, and I've even heard it. So I have not had this happen to me, but I've heard it more than once, where people don't even know that they had childhood trauma, because it was just they totally, I just blanked on the word, but they totally froze in the moment and subconsciously took it in, and they don't even have a memory of it. They disassociated, I think is the word for it, from that event, and they have no association with anything that's happened to them as a child. Now, that did not happen to me. My PTSD or my traumas and my wounds have actually come from more of not necessarily one instance or one exposure, one situation. They actually come from daily not beatings, that's not the right word, but like negative thoughts that just keep getting repeated over and over and over again to kind of like subconsciously sink down into, oh, I'm really not a very good human being, or I really am stupid, or I really am not acceptable in some ways, right? Like I really am wounded. And those woundings came from being mistreated over and over and over again in places that I didn't even know. Honestly, in all situations, I didn't even know I was being mistreated. Okay, I don't want to get too long, so I'm just keeping track of the time here. So those two situations, I'm sure there's more than that, but those are ones that it's kind of like once and done, that trauma, and it could be trauma you remember, or it could be trauma that you disassociated from, or it could be that they just kept taking their stuff out on you, right? And it has nothing to do with you, but they are so attached to who you are, how you're being, and their side of your relationship with them. Meaning you have to have some kind of relationship with them. And it doesn't have to be like a romantic relationship. It could be like a mother-child, father-child, kind of the parent-child relationship. It could be a spouse relationship. It could be a best friend relationship. It could be a sibling relationship. It could be an aunt, uncle, grandma, any kind of relationship like that. But it could actually be like a long-term, like teacher student. It could be like a banker client. It could be like not just bankers, but any organization or business relationship, right? It could be a work employee, employer. It could be anything, right? Like it could be anything. It could be you're part of an organization. It could be you're subscribed to someone's. So that kind of goes back to like the teacher. I'm thinking teacher-student kind of relationship, or subscription, or like anything like that. So, but they could really be, if you're kind of in like a one-on-one relationship with them, you know what I mean? Like there could be some projections. There could be some attachments. They have attachments. This leads me right into probably what I'll talk about next time, is like attachments, like expectations. So they have expectations about the outcome of the situation. So they might be like a student teacher. As the teacher, they might be attached to the outcome of what their student does, right? And from a place of authority, they might be holding those expectations over your head kind of thing. And if you're not reaching those expectations, which are not even yours, not your expectations of how you see your journey going or how you see your education going, and they might be holding you to a standard so you fulfill their expectations. Now, doesn't that sound like a parent-child relationship as well? Doesn't that sound like a business client relationship as well? So they have expectations and they're projecting their judgments all over you. So I will go into expectations and judgments in another podcast. That will be up and coming. So stay tuned. I'm just writing that down. I have just taking notes. That will be up and coming. But those expectations are projections, and they project them onto you. And if you do not hold up your end of the bargain, they are going to treat you poorly somehow, because they're trying to get you up to their standards of expectations. That is incongruent. Judgments and expectations are ego. Judgment and expectations is fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of feeling unloved, fear of not feeling, or fear of not succeeding, or fear of not being good enough, not being held up to some kind of standard. And I'm all for succeeding, and I'm all for being respected and holding some kind of standard. But expectations are something different, sort of. I'm going to have to wrap my head around this one before I even Um, this is going to be a conversation, and I know I'm going to spit it out, and I might talk around in circles trying to spit it out. But judgment is something that sometimes is hard for people to understand. So that will be next week's or next time, next podcast conversations. But suffice it to say, in this podcast, people can have expectations of us, projections onto us, attachments. They attach their idea to our bodies, and then they abuse us or manipulate us, and they use us for their gains, right? And they are not congruent. So going back to congruency, going back to taking responsibility, going back to understanding. And that's where we kind of need to come in as a sensitive being. When we are in those kind of relationships, when people are projecting onto us, then we need to say, is this aligned with me? Is this relationship aligned with me? Is this relationship aligned with me? Is this contract aligned with me? Do I need to get out of my car contract loan? Do I need to move that loan to a different institution because my banking institution is not aligned, or this, loan is not aligned with because of some kind of poor relationship with the institution? Is this class that I'm taking, this student teacher, maybe I need to reconvene on this class that I'm taking? Maybe I need to step away from the whole thing. Maybe I just need to switch classes. Maybe I need to drop this class and pick up a different elective. How is it that we can reconfigure? How is that we can make new choices in our life to honor ourselves, to respect ourselves, to love ourselves through this experience, okay? Sometimes, we need to remove that attachment, and we need to remove ourselves from the experience. Now, in my mind, in my understanding, I should say, not in my mind, in my understanding, in my experiences, there is two ways for me to move through, or you to move through. Now, if you come up with another way, that's awesome. That's great. But you can either leave the situation, as I spoke about, or you can start to have those really hard conversations, I guess 3, but you can essentially change the relationship. Now, you can change the relationships by holding them accountable, kind of, sort of, having those hard conversations, right? And really speaking to them about how you're feeling and what's coming up for you. I guess the second way, the first one is just leave the relationship altogether or leave the situation altogether. The second one is to change the relationship and continue on in it, right? But just continue it in a changed way. Now, to change it, you can either address it from their side, like you can really hold them accountable, because I don't know how else to say that, but it doesn't feel quite right. But you can, yeah, you can put it back on them. You can have those hard conversations, and you can really sit with them with what's going on for them and what needs to change in that direction. The second thing you can do is look within yourself. What is coming up within yourself? I don't feel loved. I don't feel seen and heard. I don't feel enough for this. I don't feel congruent with this. And instead of just running right off the bat, instead of just saying, oh, this is a crappy situation, I'm out, you can do that. But if it is you that's in the crappy one in the situation, right? There's always this point as well. This is why we always need to try to stay consistent, try to stay congruent, try to stay aligned with who we really are, and try to really take responsibility for our stuff as much as we are aware of, and continue to be more and more aware of. Because looking within yourself and being like, okay, I don't feel seen and heard. I don't feel loved. I don't feel enough. I don't feel whatever comes out on your side of the situation. And you work with that. You move through that. You come up with forgiveness. You come up with acceptance. You come up with your responsibilities. Like maybe you need to be a better better money manager instead of projecting it onto the bank, right? Like instead of going and having those hard conversations with the bank. But you need to clean up your side of the fence first, right? You need to be that good money manager. You need to be paying your bills on time and doing all those things. And once you have that cleaned up and say, okay, well, this still isn't working for me, you can have the hard conversations. Once you have the hard conversations, they're just like, dude, no, this is just how it is. I'm just going to be a turd about this. Then you can leave the situation, right? Do you see the flow of that? Do you see? So if it really is someone else attaching to you, if it really is someone else projecting onto you, if it really is someone else's expectations, someone else's belief system, someone else's chords, like I imagine it and you can imagine this in a variety of ways. My visualizations, because my clairvoyance really comes through on some of these things, that it's just like, like a boat anchor, but like an arrow kind of like, like really anchored into you, or like cat's claws, or like an animal's claws really clawing into you. An arrow is a good one. Knives, anything that's kind of like attacking or attaching. I've also had things like not so dramatic, but things like carrying around someone else's baggage. So whose baggage are you carrying around, right? I've Santa Claus bag or a backpack, or like whose other baggage are you carrying around? So whose expectations are you holding on to, right? Trying to keep the peace, sometimes it's unspoken to you, or sometimes it is spoken to you, and you're just trying to compromise or do those things while you're compromising your own values, right? Now, there is a place for compassion. There is a place for kindness. There is a place for seeing the other side of it and empathy and all of that stuff, absolutely. But if you're compromising your own values for someone else's values, that needs to be rectified. Okay. My computer is telling me that it is full and I gotta go, and this is about at the time limit. So this is going to be part 1, and part 2 is going to be next time on expectations and judgments. And I will end it here because this is all about congruency, really getting into congruency with yourself. And if things aren't flowing in ease and grace with you, then look to see what other relationships you're in and what other things you're holding on to. If you're holding on to someone else's stuff, or someone else is projecting onto you, it's telling me it's going to end really soon, then that's something to look at as well. Okay, my sensitive friends, I will see you on the next podcast. And that's it for me today.